Welcome to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast, where we help you in the LGBTQ plus community find a safe and affordable retirement place. Join Mark Goldstein as he interviews others who live in gay-friendly places around the globe. Learn about the climate, cost of living, healthcare, crime and safety, and more. Now, here's your host, Mark Goldstein.
Welcome to another episode of Where Do Gays Retire podcast. Today I have special guest Steve Aronberg, and he's live from Malaga, Spain. So we're going to learn everything. We're going to take a deep dive into Malaga, Spain. I'll tell you a little bit about Steve first. So Steve was born in Nuremberg, Germany. His dad was in the army and was stationed there. He proposed to his mother, and then she flew over and got married. He spent all of his teen years in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and graduated from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst with a degree in business administration. His entire career was with the U.S. federal government. He spent his last 25 years working for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. He's a strong proponent of equality. He's fortunate that he can spend the majority of his working career supporting civil rights. And I'm jealous, yes, that is very fortunate. And he was also fortunate enough to retire at the young age of 55. During his career, he lived in Washington, D.C. metro area and worked in San Diego, California for 17 plus years. He met his husband in San Diego, and they've been together for 25 years and married since 2013. They bought their home in Spain in January of 2017, and he's now a Spanish resident and lives full-time there. So Steve, tell us first, why did you decide to move out of the U.S., and how did you choose Malaga?
Yes, I'd always thought about living outside of the United States after I retired, and I had been saving up some money just for the purpose of trying to purchase a property outside of the United States. And I'd considered several places. I love to travel and have traveled extensively around the world, and I really was sold on Brazil, to be honest, and looked at places there. And then the political climate changed, and we happened to have a friend who lives very nearby to us here, just outside of Malaga. And we were visiting her, and we just decided that this was a good place to be, and happened to mention to her that, why don't we have a look at some real estate? And she had a friend who was a real estate agent, and she set us up for an appointment, and 3 days later we found our home here.
Wow. So you kind of it was pretty much at the spur of the moment kind of thing, right?
It was, and it was on January 2017, so it was just prior to the Trump administration getting into office, and I could tell things were changing in the United States in a way that I wasn't comfortable with. In hindsight, I was correct about that, at least in terms of my political views, and so it was just a good overall choice to move here.
I think we're on the same page, because the same thing is kind of happening, and right now, where politically in the U.S. we're really not in a good place. So that's why we're taking a look at Spain as well. So tell us, geographically speaking, where is Malaga located, and where within Malaga are the beaches and in the center city?
Okay, well, Malaga is on the Costa del Sol and the southern coast of Spain. If you were to look at a map and you could see where Gibraltar is, we're about an hour away from Gibraltar. So it's the southernmost coast, and the city of Malaga is about a million people in the general metropolitan area. But it still feels like a pretty walkable small city. The historical center of the city was blocked off to automobile traffic back in the early 90s, and that really changed the feel of the city. Now the whole center of the city is all blocked off. It's all pedestrian zone, and it really is a very nice walkable city. And the beaches are very close to the center of the city. So the central part of the city, if you maybe walk for 10 minutes, you can get to where the coastline is, and the terminal where all of the cruise ships come in, and then just to the left of that is your first nice beach. There's also beaches, of course, to the west of Malaga, and they're all very easily accessible.
I do love walking. I mean, to be able to walk anywhere in town, so where do expats usually move to? Do they move to around the center city, or are they spread out? I know there's different neighborhoods. There's Soho. Is it Hewlin? Is another one that's close by.
And Plaza Merced is another one, and yeah, they're pretty spread out, to be honest with you. There's some folks who want to live in the historical center. There's some folks who want to live a little more further away in a neighborhoody place. One great thing about Malaga is not only is it pretty easy to get from one place to another, there's also a local subway, and they're actually building a second line that's scheduled to open in, I think, 2024. And there's a local train system that also goes down the coast. So you can pretty much get around in Malaga fairly easily, even if you're not right in the historical center of the city.
That's great, yeah. As long as you have all of the amenities that you can walk to wherever you are. Does each neighborhood have their own, supermarket, pharmacy type thing, or do you have to, take the train?
Absolutely, yeah. There's lots of little small supermarkets, and then there's, obviously areas where there are larger supermarkets where if you don't have a car, you can take a train, or else take a Uber or a cab too. But yeah, most people in the city tend to do shopping on a daily or, every other day basis because it's just easy. There's a really nice market in the center of Malaga that used to be a train station, and it has lots of fresh vegetables and meat and cheese and everything you would expect in that kind of a market, and it's open every day but Sunday. And so, you can pretty much find anything footsteps away from where you are in the city.
That's great. That's great. That's what we're all looking for, actually. Okay, tell us about the climate. What are the summers like? Are they really hot and humid? Is it like
August tends to be the hottest month here. Fortunately, being on the coast, there's generally a breeze that's coming off of the Mediterranean. Also, being backed by mountains, that helps to keep the heat inland. So it's not nearly as brutally hot here as it might be inland, say in Granada or in Cordoba. On the coast in Malaga and in the areas surrounding, it's really maybe average temperatures high 80s during the day in the summer, and at night it gets down into the low 70s. It's usually very pleasant in the evenings. And there will be a hot spell or two when it might get up into the high 90s a couple of days, and also humidity. The weather here is kind of strange. We have weird wind patterns that change the weather, but for the most part, it's a very sunny, and we have about 300 days of sun a year here. That really draws folks here to not only to live, but also to vacation.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very pleasant place. In the winter, the coldest night last year got down maybe into the low 40s, and it can get up as high as in the mid 60s during the day, and it can be very pleasant. So it's a pretty mild climate. I've lived in San Diego before, and it really does remind me of the climate in San Diego.
Oh, I love San Diego climate. Yeah. So with all the heat that Portugal and parts of Spain are experiencing now, is Malaga experiencing the same type of intense heat?
It's warm here, but it's not nearly as intense. It tends to be more dry than humid. As a matter of fact, just 2 days ago, there's a fire hazard. We just had a fire in our local mountains that they finally have gotten contained. Good. There's always a fire risk. But yeah, for the most part, it's not nearly as hot as, say, somewhere like Sevilla, which they call it the frying pan of Europe. And I was there a couple of years ago in July, and I found out what they meant.
Yeah, I heard.
In the evening, it's still well over 100 degrees with no breeze, and it's just very warm. And here, it's not like that at all.
Oh, good. It sounds like here in Phoenix.
Yeah, it's probably similar to Phoenix. Exactly.
Last night I went out, I think it was like almost 9 o'clock, and it was still like 106, something like that. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it gets warm. Okay, so the climate seems ideal for both living and for the tourists. So do you have any type of LGBT community in Malaga?
Yes. One of the things I have to say about Andalusia and in our area or here in particular is that it's very, very LGBTQ friendly. There is a huge community in Torremolinos, which is the next city to the west of Malaga, that is a gay vacation destination. And a lot of Europeans and people from all over the world come to Torremolinos to vacation. There's a gay beach, there are several gay restaurants and hotels. There's a whole area of Torremolinos that's really also blocked off to pedestrian traffic only, that has got a lot of clubs and stuff. And in Malaga, there are some gay clubs, but they're more gay friendly as opposed to being exclusively gay. And that really seems to be the case in most places here in Spain.
Everywhere in Spain.
Whenever you go out, it's not an exclusively gay place, but it's gay friendly. You might see a lot of gay folks there, but by the same token, you could walk into a place pretty much anywhere with your gay friends and it wouldn't be an issue.
That's good. Yeah. See, here in the States is a little bit different because unfortunately there are people that, don't care too much about the gay community. So, okay. So that is definitely a pro too. So do you have some sort of gayborhood like we do here in the U.S., or is it just all integrated?
It's pretty much integrated. I would say in Malaga, La Merced area is probably where most of the gay folks live. But again, it's not really like a gayborhood like you might find in, say, what used to be the Castro or Hillcrest in San Diego or
Right.
Boys Town in Chicago. It's pretty spread out. And to me, actually, that's one of the things that's appealing because, I don't feel like I'm totally surrounded by gay people. I feel like it doesn't really matter.
Right. That's good. That is actually good. That's diversity.
Yes.
Yes, in its best. Okay. How difficult was it to meet others? And when you arrived, did both or either one of you know the language, Spanish?
So it's actually not difficult to meet other folks. A lot of people are in the same boat as we are. Retired, time on our hands, lots of leisure activities to do, and all you have to do is just go out to a restaurant for a normal 3-hour dinner, and you'll find yourself chatting with someone nearby and make a new friend. And actually, that's how I met, started meeting people. And through those people, I met a whole group of other people. And I have a really great set of friends here, straight and gay. And it's just a very comfortable place. And I think it just makes it easier to meet people when you're all in that same boat, without having to work and
Right.
having to be stressed. And you don't
Yeah.
have so many things on your plate. It just makes it easier.
Oh,
So
it
yeah,
sure
we've been
does.
very fortunate that as far as Spanish, I really, really should work harder on learning Spanish. One of the things about this area is there are a lot of British expats that live here. And because of that, the tourist industry here caters to that. And so they know that I can't hide it. I'm obviously American. I walk into a place and I'll try my best. I speak, a minimal amount of Spanish, restaurant Spanish,
Right.
and I'll go into a restaurant and I'll say, some agua con gas, por favor, and they'll say, do you want ice? So it's
Isn't
very
it seltzer or sparkling water?
Yeah, sparkling water. So if you want, it's just really difficult they will answer you in English, even
English.
though you say something in Spanish. And also, if you ask someone, hablas inglés, they will always say, a little. And what that means is they're fluent. So you can pretty much just start asking questions in English and there won't be a problem.
That's a start.
That's not to say that there aren't still some folks who speak a limited amount of English, but you can really get by. And that's the whole problem with not being immersed and having to learn Spanish, that I have really been kind of lazy in picking up and not really forcing myself to like maybe take a course or get a tutor so that I can be a little more fluent. That's my goal, to be at least able to hold conversations with folks.
And that's what I'm actually, my husband and I are trying to do right now. We're trying to learn. So every opportunity that we get, we're either online or actually we looked at another online course called italki, where
Okay.
you have a listing of hundreds of teachers, and they could be professional with degrees or non. And you look at their profile. If you like them, you try them for $5, and you get a half an hour, and they kind of like go over what they're going to teach. And if you like them, you pay what their hourly rate is. And it seems pretty interesting. So I started yesterday on that. And
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, we're going to just try. We're going to try. So because we don't know where we're going to land.
Of course.
And it could be in a place maybe where English is not really spoken, much. But
Right, understood.
I love what you said when you're in a restaurant for 3 hours, because it probably what I hear is it's so totally different than the U.S. So if you're at a restaurant, they're not going to come over to you and say, here's the check, and turn over the table. They're pretty much, if you don't get their attention, you could be there for the rest of the evening if you want.
Exactly, and if you book a table, it's yours for the evening. They're not looking to turn over their table. They take their time with the service. It's not uncommon to go out with a group of friends and spend 2 and 3 hours having lunch or dinner. It's just the kind of lifestyle that exists here in Spain.
Yeah, it's a little bit more laid back.
Yes, it's very laid back. They say tranquilo. And here, especially in Andalusia, you really notice that there's not really a lot of hurry to do much of anything. It's
Could be
funny
a good thing and a bad thing.
Exactly. It's not quite the mañana mentality that, some Spanish countries have. But, people here are very efficient. I've found that to be true. But, when it comes to I'll meet you at a certain time, that's sort of a window. It's not necessarily, it's not, when they say 7 o'clock, they mean 7 o'clock-ish,
Oh, okay. That's good to know, because like New York, it was very stylish. Like if you were to be somewhere at 7 o'clock, you'd like walk in at 7:30. It would be totally acceptable.
Right.
And then I moved to Florida, and I got there. Let's say it's 7:05, and I was like harassed. Why weren't you here at 7? And I'm
You're
like,
late.
what? You're late. So I kind of like that, 7, 10, 15, 20, that's...
Sure.
Yeah, that's comfortable. Okay. So are your friends, are they mostly expats, or are they...
So
there's
I'm
some
lucky.
locals?
I have a mix of people that I know that are Spanish and that are also expats. And since we live in a pretty small little village of about 3,000 folks, that's something that I'd never ever experienced in my life. I've always either lived in or near a city. And I tend to be someone who's pretty suburban by nature. And here, even though our town has about 100,000 folks in it, the area where we live is the old pueblo. And we can walk to restaurants and shops, and we walk into the pueblo, and we recognize people, and people recognize us. So we've gotten to meet quite a lot of folks that are here, and some Spanish, some otherwise.
So, okay.
So it's kind of a nice thing.
And a pueblo, it means a town, right?
It's pueblo is a little
like
town.
a little town. And
Little town.
your town is called Pueblo Benalmádena?
Benalmádena Pueblo, that's correct.
Oh,
yeah.
Benalmádena Pueblo. I knew I was going to screw that up somehow.
It's okay.
And
Yeah.
okay, so, and that is, if I'm not mistaken, south of Center City, about...
It's more west. It's more
West?
west of Malaga. Yeah.
Okay.
So even though the coast sort of goes southwest from Malaga down to Gibraltar, it's pretty much almost due west from Malaga to where we live. There's a big mountain in the middle between us and Malaga, but their bay and ours are very much pretty similar in terms of being equally along the coast.
So when I see pictures of the beautiful sky at night, and also, is that the Mediterranean or is that a bay?
Yes, it's a Mediterranean.
Oh, it looks lovely. It looks lovely. That's a dream, drinking wine, sitting by the Mediterranean, enjoying
Mark, it's
life.
not a bad life, I'm here to tell you.
It doesn't seem like it, let me tell you. Yeah, I envy you right now. So you would say speaking Spanish is not a must.
It's not a must.
It's helpful because
it's helpful
of the tourism.
Especially, if you want to make yourself understood, when you're trying to get things done. Especially if you're getting, Spanish are famous for their paperwork. So nothing is easy here when it comes to getting, in America, you do part A, you do part B, you do part C, and you're done. Here it's, you walk in and they say, oh, well, you need to have this paper, and you say, oh, I didn't know that, and you go back with the paper, and the next day say, oh, no, you didn't need that, but you do need this paper.
Oh, Lord.
It's kind of like that. So you sort of have to get used to that sort of Spanish bureaucracy, and the people who work for the government agencies tend to not speak English.
Oh, so that's an issue.
You might need to bring someone with you who's fluent in Spanish to help you. That's always helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So what's the local economy like? Can you provide examples to the audience about, renting versus purchasing, your electric bills,
Sure.
Water bills,
I just
gas?
took a quick look just before we started this podcast in Malaga, because I'm more familiar with the area around here. It looks like, in this historical center and in the neighborhoods around, you can pretty much find a two-bedroom apartment in a low-rise building for somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 euros a month with a balcony. I mean, if you want something nicer, certainly that's available as well. You could probably spend up to 3,000 euros a month if you chose to. But if you wanted something a little smaller with less of a view because it was more affordable, you could probably spend 700 euros a month. So it's just a matter of your taste, your budget, and what you like. So it's pretty affordable to live here. In terms of real estate, we were very fortunate to find our place, and the value of it has gone up a little bit, though still kind of not a great market for owners. It's better for buyers still. You can probably, for 200 to 250,000 euros, find a very nice place with ocean views, with maybe not a private pool, with pool access, with maybe a covered garage, a parking space. Yeah, we recently bought a second property. My mother-in-law, she lives in Sweden, and she loves to come down here to visit. We'd been looking for a few years and found a place right smack in the middle of our pueblo. Oh. And we paid, it's 2 bedrooms with 1 bath, but it has a giant balcony on the top floor with 360-degree views.
Wow.
And we paid 170,000 euros.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and it's literally you walk out from the front door, take a right and a right, and you're right in the center of our pueblo with restaurants, shops. It's lovely.
And you purchased a condo?
It's actually a penthouse in a community. So there are 3 buildings in our community, and each building has 6 units in. So ours is the top floor and the middle floor.
Do you have a lift?
Nope. No, it's all stairs. But we have a parking lot in our back with covered parking, and it's just steps down there to our front door.
And you have this huge balcony.
But there are where we are. There are a lot of mountains and hills. It's not flat.
Okay.
In Malaga City, you can find places that are very flat. Here, where we are, it's not quite as flat. So.
Well, you get your exercise.
Absolutely. Those dog walks will get to you sometimes.
I could imagine. How about bills? And do you need air conditioning? I guess you do.
Well, I'm an American, so I have to have air conditioning and heat.
Yeah.
Many people here don't have air conditioning. Where we are, there's a constant breeze. So if you just open all the windows and we have ceiling fans, oftentimes that's enough. But on a day like today, we have individual units that are in each room on the wall.
No, that's good.
And they tend to cool the entire room, no worries. And our electric bill last month, we had the air going most of the time was less than 100 euros.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that's great that you can control it in every room, because why spend money if you're in the bedroom and you don't want to cool off the living room?
But there's
a plus.
very few places that have central air or central heat here.
I see. And how about water bills? Are they large or?
Really not that bad. I would say 50 to 75 euros a month on average. That's what we pay. They bill us quarterly. It's not very expensive, I don't think, for water as well.
And I'm sure gas. Do you have gas?
So a lot of places don't have natural gas lines, so they sell butane gas tanks. So
Okay.
you'll see a lot of people. So it was a little different for me. I wasn't really used to that having to hook our hot water up to a butane tank, because when it runs out, it's out, and then you have to replace it with another one. So if you happen to be in the
That's weird.
shower,
It's like a
it's a weird
barbecue.
thing. It's kind of like a barbecue, yeah. So, but they last for quite a long time, even with all the craziness with the prices of oil and gas right now. They run about 20 euros for a tank, and it's good for a good month to heat the water and in our home, no problem.
I wonder if people go without
And
that. Like
Also,
they
we
have no
use
hot
it
water.
to, also we use it, it hooks to our stove as well, so we use it for cooking.
Okay. So you have a gas stove?
Gas stove.
Okay. And how about taxes? I know taxes is like it's a personal thing, but I know that Spain on itself has a wealth tax, but I think
Yes.
you have to be pretty wealthy.
It's a pretty high threshold. I think the last I looked, it was 700,000 euros if you had that much wealth per person, and it doubles per couple. So that's a pretty significant amount.
That's a lot of money.
Also, they value, say you own a home in the United States, which we do. They value it at the price that you paid for the home, not the current value, which is an odd thing when we were doing our taxes that we found out. So we really haven't had an issue with the wealth tax. You do have there's an agreement between the United States and Spain, so you can't be double taxed. And the tax rate here is definitely higher than it is in the United States, but it's not crazy expensive more. For me, I file taxes still in the United States and pay my taxes there because I'm a federal government retiree and I get a pension, so they automatically tax that. And then anything additional gets filed here, and it really isn't crazy expensive. Local taxes and real estate taxes are even less. We pay what they call EB. I don't know what it stands for, IBI. But last year our EB was 270 euros for the year. We pay basura, which is a trash tax, and that is about 220 euros a year. And that's it.
Not bad at all.
Yeah, it's really not bad. You'd be surprised how, you'd think it would be more expensive tax-wise. You do have VAT, and they add on 21% to a lot of services and goods, so you have to take that into consideration when you're buying big-ticket items like cars and appliances, or
Right.
if you're having services done to your home. But it all works out in the wash for the most part because services are much cheaper here. Really, the only thing that I have found to be more expensive are electronics and gasoline. Gasoline is still much more expensive here than in the United States.
I better buy a new laptop before I come down.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
You mentioned you still have a place in the U.S. So moving, and all the paperwork, do you still, in order to get your Social Security or pension, do you still have to maintain a U.S. address?
You don't, but it helps. So I just turned 65 last week. as a matter of fact. And I'm trying to get my Medicare situation straightened out.
I just applied.
So my hubby's flying back to the States tomorrow because he has to work, and he's bringing my driver's license, my Virginia driver's license, and my passport with him, which I'm a little not happy about, but they needed to see it in order to process my Medicare application. But once I have it, it doesn't matter whether I live in Spain or anywhere else outside the United States or in the States, it's still good.
So, okay. Yeah.
Same with Social Security. As long as you worked your whole life in the United States, your Social Security you can actually have it deposited in your Spanish bank account here directly.
Oh, okay. Really? Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's interesting, because my plan was not to collect Social Security. I'm right behind you. I'm going to be 65 in October. So
Okay.
the window just opened for Medicare for me.
Right.
So I just applied for that, but I don't plan on collecting Social Security until full retirement, which is like 66 and
66 and a half.
and a
or
half.
so.
Yeah. And so I could actually do that from Spain. I guess I could.
Absolutely. Sure. No
I
worries.
guess I could. Oh. And you can do a direct deposit instead of a U.S. bank directly into a Spanish bank?
Yes, you can have it directly deposited into your Spanish bank account. Yep, you just need your IBAN number and you're all good to go.
That's another thing we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay. All right. That's interesting. So do you think you're better off, let's say we wanted to purchase, and we're probably thinking of going and renting first, but if you're purchasing a property, is it better or to have like an attorney, an immigration attorney with you to...
I would say if you're purchasing a property, you definitely would want to have an attorney who's familiar with Spanish real estate, because the process is completely different here.
Okay.
We were very unfamiliar with some of the things that had to be done in the process, and having an attorney is essential. Also to protect your interests from the seller. You never know.
Right.
There was a time earlier in the 1980s and 90s when people were trying to sell the same property over and over again.
Oh, boy.
So, you had to be careful to find out that, indeed this was the actual owner of the property. And so with an attorney, it really protects your interests. They do a title search, and it just is in your own best interest to do.
Oh, yeah. How about a relocation specialist? Did you have one, or
I did not. I really think that would be up to you. If you end up coming to Spain and spending some time, I think that you could probably do it on your own without having to have someone help you to relocate. There's lots of, the Spanish consulates and embassies around the United States are very helpful. If you just go to their websites, and you can see they lay out the rules and what you're going to need to do in order to apply for either a golden visa or a non-lucrative visa. And you have to do it from outside the country. So you have to do it from the United States before you come to Spain to live. You can't move to Spain and then apply for an NLV. I was fortunate in that my husband is an EU citizen.
Oh.
So I was able, it really cut a lot out of the process for me.
You have an
I
in.
still found it to be tedious nonetheless, and a little intimidating when you go to the Estranjeros office and you're trying to figure out and go through the whole process and all the paperwork. My real estate agent, who is now a good friend of mine, gave me a really great advice, and that is save every single piece of paper that you receive once you get to Spain and keep it in a big folder. And carry that folder around with you every time you have any kind of dealings, because you never know what piece of paper or document they're going to ask for.
Right. That
So
sounds like
I have
good
my
advice.
big yellow plastic folder filled with all my documents.
That sounds like great advice. Okay, and we'll get into that too. So there's a non-lucrative visa, and that's for people that are coming to Spain that are not working, that are basically retired, that will not take away a job from the Spanish people.
Exactly.
And the Golden Visa, I believe, is a visa that kind of makes things a little bit easier on your residency. So you need to purchase a property of $500,000.
And it has to be right. It has to be a certain value, and you have to have a certain amount of money in the bank that you can show, which you do for the non-lucrative visa as well.
Right.
Basically, they don't want you to be a drain on the Spanish economy.
Right.
And if you can show, you have a certain level of income, or you have a certain amount of money in the bank, that's all you need to do. Another thing that's really important is that you're required to have health insurance in order to get your non-lucrative visa.
Private.
And, well, it has to cover your health. So yeah, if it's private, it doesn't necessarily have to be Spanish, but it helps that it is. For instance, when I first moved here, I still have my Blue Cross Blue Shield federal employee plan that I have subscribed to, and that I was able to use that without getting Spanish insurance. Subsequently, I ended up getting private health insurance here in Spain, which is, by the way, very affordable. And for me, I was over age 60. I had a pre-existing condition. I'm paying about 110 euros a month for my private health insurance.
That's
and it's
really good.
Excellent. It covers everything except prescriptions, basically. And hospitalizations. It covers you outside of Spain if you're traveling. It's really excellent.
I wouldn't think that your U.S. insurance would cover you in Spain.
I guess because I worked for the federal government, they have this plan is international. So
that's
it does.
great.
But it's a pain because if you use it, then you have to pay, and then you get reimbursed by filing a claim.
Gotcha.
Fortunately, I never really had a situation where I had to deal with that. So
yeah,
and now that I'm getting on Medicare, I'm actually seriously thinking of just canceling it entirely because I don't need it since I'm living here.
Yeah, we have a pretty good deal as well because my husband was a teacher in New York State. So our medical is pretty good, and I would hate to give that up so soon.
Sure.
So I'm going to hold on to that just to see, until we get our feet, a little wet in the water, so to speak. So, yeah, so they say that private health insurance will cover you. You'll never even see a bill.
Yeah, pretty much. You just walk in. You call them on the phone. It's very different here than it is in the United States. I was really kind of surprised. You walk in. You don't have a particular doctor assigned to you. You can ask for one that you know, and you make an appointment. You show up. You sit down across from the physician, and she says, "Hi, how can I help you today? What's going on?" And it's not like, you don't have to get weighed. You don't have to have your temperature, your blood pressure, your height, none of that. She sits you in the chair and says, "How can I take care of you today?" So it's a very different experience.
It's very different.
Yes,
it's refreshing.
And they're very thorough. They really, she's got her computer in front of her, and she's looking up online whatever you're telling her and figuring it out. Yeah, it's amazing. Quite a different experience.
While we're on that subject, how about with doctors? So there are parts of Spain where I was told somebody was refused care because they didn't speak Spanish. That was in another city.
I see. Well, certainly if you have private health insurance, I think that, and especially in an area such as we are here in Malaga, there are plenty of English-speaking doctors. I imagine if you were maybe in a more rural area or, in a smaller town, that might be an issue. And certainly that could be an issue if you wanted to get on the national health insurance. Once you become a resident and you're here for a year, you actually can qualify for the national health insurance, which, again, is free and does cover prescriptions that they're like nothing. And but it's more like a socialized medicine situation where you go to the clinic and you see whoever you see, and they almost all are exclusively Spanish speakers. Very few English.
And you might have a longer wait also.
You might. Yeah, it's not as bad as you would think it to be. Maybe just for like surgery, that kind of thing, you might have a little bit more of a wait. If you have private health insurance, you just schedule it whenever you can.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's really, that would be what I would recommend to folks is if they, can get it. Certainly there's some people who might be excluded based on their health, that they should definitely try to get a private health insurance plan that, covers them. It's really a very good plan.
Makes sense. Okay. Does Malaga have a culture scene, an art scene, culture.
Absolutely.
What do people do? I'm from New York. I want to,
There's amazing amounts of stuff going on in southern Spain and in Malaga all the time. There's fiestas constantly. It seems like every other Tuesday is a Spanish holiday. We just had, as a matter of fact, over the weekend, last weekend was a big holiday here, San Juan. And, their festivities are unbelievable. During the Holy Week, Semana Santa, right around Easter, there are so many amazing things to see and to take in. They have processions where they carry these huge thrones. I don't know, you may have seen this kind of stuff on YouTube before. 300 people carrying a throne with Jesus or Mary basically on their back.
Wow.
And they march it through on this route, for hours. And it's astonishing to watch. There's a lot of museums in Malaga. There's a Picasso museum. He's actually from Malaga. There's another in Bernisma, which also has a branch here in Malaga. That's also quite good. There are several other smaller museums. There's lots of theater, concerts constantly. There's live music. There's flamenco on a regular basis. You'd be surprised. If you wanted to stay busy every day, you could find something to do.
Do you think have you ever heard of any of the theater or any movies in English?
The theaters actually here have certain days when they will offer showing them movies in English.
Wow.
Yeah, theater, there's an English theater in Fuengirola, which is the next town over. They put on local productions, but they're quite good. I've seen several things there, quite, like community theater. And Antonio Banderas is actually from Malaga. And he has recently put on a Spanish-speaking version of a chorus line, which ran for several months.
Wow.
So, it's amazing. And then live acts pop through here on a regular basis. Yeah. Simply Red was just here not so long ago, like about 2 weeks ago. So you'd be surprised. People that you've heard of are,
That's refreshing. At least I won't be cultured out, even though
I was surprised also,
language.
Now that we're talking about this, how much they listen to American music.
I believe it.
You go in, instead of Spanish music, you would think Spanish music would be prevalent.
Yeah.
No, you hear American music all over the place. It's kind of strange. Even the people who do local performances, do cover bands of American stuff. Yeah.
That's
it's
great.
Kind of funny.
That's kind of great. I'd love that. I'd feel right at home and enjoy that. So, okay. So are you a foodie?
I am.
What's the restaurant, the scene like?
So I like to say you really have to work hard to seek out bad food in Spain. Food here is generally really good. With the exception of Mexican restaurants and Chinese restaurants.
That's what I've heard.
I desperately miss Mexican food and Chinese food. The Mexican food here is dreadful, but the Spanish food is astonishing. And it's not, you can find your Menú del Dia place where you pay €9 and get a 3-course meal and a glass of wine. Or, if you really want to go out to a fine restaurant, here in our village, we have a place that does a 7-course taste menu. It's not a Michelin star, but it could be. And I think it's like about €50, a 7-course tasting menu. Wow. And you can add wine courses if you like, and the food is outstanding. I mean, excellent.
€50. I can't even get that as a normal Saturday night meal here.
Of course. That's what it would be at Chili's with the margarita, right?
Right, exactly.
So you get very spoiled here in Spain because the prices for food and restaurants are extremely reasonable. For instance, if you want to go out and get a bottle of wine with dinner, generally you pay €20 for a bottle of wine at a restaurant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazingly inexpensive, and the quality of the food is there's a lot, especially in Malaga. It's sort of like a gastronomy center. A lot of people are drawn there to open interesting kinds of restaurants to try to compete for the tourist dollar.
Right.
So you can find some amazing places. Then, of course, if you like fresh seafood, they have chiringuitos. It's right along the beach. These places that are, you can actually eat on the sand if you like. And they're literally, you're right next to the Mediterranean, and fresh fish galore.
Oh my God.
And you can just, sit there for 3 hours with your friends and have a glass of wine or a bottle, and it's just terrific. The food is really great.
I've seen on the beach they have these. They're big on sardines. They barbecue sardines.
Yes, espet they call them, and they're tiny little sardines here in this part of Spain. It's not really my thing, but they put them over like a wood fire, and put them on a little spit, and people love those.
I love seafood. I just love seafood, and I know paella is big, and you kind of learn that you have to eat paella during lunch. It's not a dinner food, so you gotta get used to eating at different times as well.
Yeah, this part of Spain really isn't. You can get paella if you like. It's not really famous for paella. That's more Valencia area, about 6 hours away from here.
Yeah,
that's where the birthplace and if you talk to a Valencian, they will be very proudly telling you that the only real paella has rabbit in it, and anything else is not really paella. It's just rice with meat. Rice with seafood. But it's just funny. But definitely here in the south of Spain, they have some very interesting Andalusian specialties. One of the things I really like are gambas a pil, which are little shrimp that they put in olive oil, and they spice it up with peppers, and it comes out sizzling on a... no, they're small. So little small shrimp. So no eyeballs. And they come out in they're sizzling and bubbling, and then they give you bread. You always ask for pan, and you dip the bread in. It's the best thing you ever had in your life. It's so delicious.
Yum.
Yeah, it's definitely an Andalusian thing.
I want to move now. So foodie and top-notch restaurants are important. It's one of my important things.
So tapas is another thing, that the art of tapas. It's a very big deal here, and different than San Sebastian where they do pinchos. Here they do tapas, and they're small portions that you can share. And they're usually very affordable, and a lot of restaurants try to get away from just serving the traditional kind of tapas you would get at a bar kind of place. Instead, they want to kind of kick it up a level, and so you can find some amazingly interesting places to get tapas.
So do people typically eat tapas for dinner?
You can have tapas for lunch or for dinner, yes. Sure.
Oh, okay. Because I figured if you're eating a bigger lunch, you're going to want a smaller dinner. I'm not sure.
People tend to eat larger lunches and tapas for dinner. Yes, that's true.
Did it take you time to get used to the hour?
I'm still working on that part. 5.5 years later, Mark. It's not easy because, I remember being hungry at 11:30 and going to lunch,
Yep.
And now lunch restaurants often don't open until 1. And Spaniards don't go to eat until 2. And the same in the evening. In Malaga, there are some restaurants that don't open until 9 o'clock, and Spaniards will go at 10.
Yeah.
And this is just a regular, that's because in the afternoon you have a siesta.
It's too hot,
so
right.
It's too hot, and so, work life, people work until 1 or 1:30, and then they get a break to eat lunch, to go home and take a nap, and then come back to work at 4:30 or 5, and then work till 8.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's interesting. The small shops still close in the afternoon, but the larger shopping centers are open the entire time, and so on.
Yeah, because by the time 10 o'clock rolls around in the evening, I'm in my third dream already.
Exactly. So, fortunately here they cater to tourists, so you can eat earlier. You can find places.
The restaurants are probably not going to be as good as the authentic ones that start at 10.
You can find good restaurants that cater to tourists as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about the public transportation. I understand Spain on a whole has a great transportation system, probably better than the U.S.
It's excellent here. Local buses are, they just, and as a matter of fact, I read this in the newspaper 2 days ago, from the months of September until the end of the year, they're just going to make it all free.
I read that.
It's all going to be free. Local trains, local buses, everything's going to be free.
How can
and
they do
that's
that?
pretty amazing that they can do that. But yeah, so in Malaga, there, like I said before, there's a subway system. There's the Renfe, which is the train that goes up and down the coast between Malaga and Fuengirola. And then, of course, there's the high-speed trains that go further afield from Malaga. The bus system is quite good and very inexpensive, and they're pretty regular and dependable as well. So it's not hard to get around. It's not. And it's very affordable.
I have some Facebook friends they just left Malaga. They were there for either 1 or 2 weeks, and they were on their way to Alicante. So the only train they said that was available went from Malaga to Madrid first, and then it went to Alicante.
Yes.
But even that, I told them, even if you went that way and it was kind of going out of the way, it was only 5 hours because it's high speed compared to the bus that you were on that's going to take 8 hours. So,
right. And also, Malaga is the third largest airport in Spain. So since people come here to take their holidays, every bargain discount airline in Europe flies here. So you can fly within Spain and outside of Spain in hours time around in Spain, hour and a half. We're up in the Rioja region. We flew into Bilbao. It's about an hour, 15-minute flight. And generally, if you buy them in advance and catch a sale, you can fly for 99 euros round trip sometimes. It's amazingly inexpensive.
That's
so
crazy.
To fly to Alicante, there's definitely direct flights from here to there.
Yeah, that's crazy. And just the fact that you can fly from Malaga probably to Paris for maybe $40 each way.
Yeah,
right?
If you catch a sale, you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Air Europa. Yes.
So is it every town in the area of Malaga is connected by transportation by rail?
So the Renfe goes along the coast, so it hits the major cities between up to Fuengirola. It doesn't go further towards. They're talking and have been talking for years about extending it all the way down through Marbella to Estepona, but that hasn't happened yet. But it takes, it goes to the airport, obviously, from the city, and it comes through Benalmádena, Torremolinos, and ends up in Fuengirola. And pretty much, you can find about anything that you want or need in that area. It's not bad at all. And it's, again, not expensive at all to take the local train.
How much does it cost each way?
So, like, for me to go round trip into Malaga, it's like €4 and change.
That's great. Yeah. That's what people want. You want connections so you're able to be mobile and get from one place to another really quickly.
We have friends who have lived here longer than we have, and they don't have a car. They live fairly close, walking distance to one of the train stations, and they're perfectly fine
That's what we
doing
want to
everything.
do, at least initially, and see if we could survive that way. I would rather do that. And I'm a New Yorker. Hey, I lived in subways all my life, so. Okay.
I needed a car. I had to have a car. So not to jump ahead here, one of the cons is, unfortunately, there's no reciprocity between the United States and Spain in terms of driver's licenses. So you basically have to start from scratch. Yeah. So you have to sign up with a driving school. You can take the written exam in English, but it's translated directly from Spanish. So sometimes it doesn't necessarily make sense. Also, they tend to use British terms versus English terms. So I had to learn a slew of those just to understand what they were talking about. Like, I had no idea that the term dampers was shock absorbers, for instance. So yeah, you have to learn these things.
Knew?
And then they make it difficult on top. They're trying to be tricky. So you have to get a minimum of 27 out of 30 questions correct.
Oof.
And so when you're taking the exam, it'll be 3 questions, and 3 answers. All the answers will be correct, but one of them will be most correct. So there's really no way for you to study. You have to just practice. That's the only way. So I was fortunate in that I passed it on my first attempt, but then I had to take the practical exam, and that's only offered in Spanish.
Yeah.
So my driving instructor, tried to help me figure out all the idiosyncrasies of learning here how to drive in Spain. We have many roundabouts, many roundabouts.
Yeah.
And so it was difficult, and it ended up taking me 3 times to pass the practical test, just because the inspector was really being that careful, looking for reasons to fail you.
Yeah,
but I finally did it. But it was difficult. It really was.
Take the second exit on the roundabout,
right, exactly.
And then I could see that.
And there is no second exit on the roundabout. That would be a wrong way street, so you have to take the third exit.
Okay.
See, that's what they do.
All right. How about what's the crime like? I know Spain
I have to
is
say,
pretty
I
safe.
feel safer here than I ever felt in the United States. Living in, metropolitan area of Washington, D.C., first off, talk about guns. Basically, there are no handguns available to the public. There are no assault weapons available to the public. The only weapons that people can actually own are hunting rifles for hunting purposes or for sport purposes like skeet shooting. In order to get a weapon like that, you have to pass a very rigorous test. You have to be licensed. You have to renew it on a regular basis. The weapon has to be secured in a locked case in your home. It's really very difficult to get a gun here. Even on the black market, they're very difficult. The police are very, on top of that sort of thing. So most of the crime that happens here is petty crime. There's, pickpocketing, that sort of thing. Not much violent crime at all. Sometimes there are break-ins into homes. So especially people who have holiday homes, they really have to secure them to make sure, because people might watch and know, if you're going to be gone for a period of time. And there's also a little problem with squatters in that same regard. But if you're here living here full time, walking down the street, even, if you're a woman who's maybe had too much to drink and you're walking around, you're safe. I mean, it's very safe.
Even in the evening, like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
No, that's when people are just starting to go out. Yes.
Right.
So, really, 1 or 2 in the morning even, it's very safe. If any time that there's any kind of violent crime, it's front page news here.
Wow.
It's very rare.
That's pretty comforting compared to the U.S. living here.
Yeah, completely
in the US.
different. Really, you instantly feel that you're much safer here.
And that's one of the most important things of looking to move out of the U.S. to another country is getting that safe feeling,
Yes.
of your new home. So that's very important. Okay, so tell us about, we spoke a little bit about, we did cover healthcare and the hospitals. How about the hospitals? They're decent hospitals, so to speak, of that specialize in certain illnesses such as
there's
cancer
a private hospital that's 3 miles from our house. We can actually see it from our balcony, called Zanet. It's internationally known, and they treat cancer patients. That's their specialty, but it's a really excellent service. And I had actually one of my friends, when he was here visiting, had a heart issue, and so we rushed him to the emergency room there, and he ended up having to get admitted and have surgery because he had a blockage.
Wow.
And he stayed in the hospital for 1 night in the ER, in the ICU, and 1 night in a private room. And he had the surgery and everything else, and the entire bill came to 8,000 euros, which the surgery alone in the United States would have been $50,000
at least.
And he was able actually to claim it on his insurance when he got back to the States.
Okay.
And the care is excellent, really. Excellent.
That's important because we're not getting any younger.
That's for sure.
And we have some conditions going on, and we want to make sure, that we settle to a place that has excellent hospital care, and just like that we're used to. And from what I hear the hospital care is even better than what it is in the U.S.
Yeah, it's very good. I have no complaints in my experiences in dealing with them so far.
Okay. So is there any wishes that you have had previously that you don't have in Malaga? Do you miss anything?
Costco.
They don't have
And
Costco?
we're getting a Costco in 2024. I'm very excited.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, right. They've expanded to Spain, and they're opening up locations. They're going to be opening one, I think, in Alicante, as a matter of fact, next year. The reason being that there are just some things you cannot get here. You know, I'm used to getting crunchy peanut butter. You won't be able to find crunchy peanut butter. You can't find it. And if you do, it's going to be an arm and a leg, and it's not going to be as good. And so there are certain things, American products that we get used to that you can't find here. But other than that, I would have to say not really. There's not really a whole lot of things that I miss about the United States in general.
Are there any cons?
I think it's a culture adjustment when you move here, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. You have to kind of have an open mind and understand that, when you're in a grocery store, the little space is just not a thing here. So someone might bump into you from behind or reach over your shoulder to get something off a shelf in a store, or kind of crowd you at the teller machine.
Here in the U.S., it's unheard of. It's like, my God, get away.
People in the United States, people are definitely, there's a certain space that you have to
get out
maintain,
of my space.
Right? and that just isn't the case here. So that took some getting used to. The bureaucracy, when you have to deal with stuff with the authorities, that can be a little painful, just because, as I said before, you might talk to one person and they tell you one thing, and you talk to a second person and they tell you something completely different. So you kind of have to get used to that idea. And then the eating time changes, that as well. That's a cultural shift.
Yep.
But for the most part, I would have to say that, driving. Spanish drivers like to tailgate. They love to tailgate. And the minute you get your Spanish driver's license, all the things that you studied so hard to learn go out the window. So basically, it's perfectly fine to double park, put on your flashers, and go in for a coffee. That happens on a regular basis. You will see it here.
Okay. Okay. All right, Steve. In wrapping up, what would you say to our audience if they're thinking about relocating to the Malaga area?
I'd say definitely come to visit first.
Yep.
It may not be your cup of tea, but, I have many friends who've already come to visit me here, and almost every single one of them has said, I had no idea how wonderful it is where you live. I've seen the pictures you post on Facebook, but I really didn't understand. And I've actually had friends move here because they thought that this was the perfect place to retire. So I actually have established my own community of friends that have moved here that I knew outside of, when I was living in the United States. So
that's great.
But I really think, some people might not think that the kind of slow, tranquilo lifestyle works for them. If they're coming from a fast-paced environment, it may not be fast enough for them.
Yeah, so it depends upon what you're looking for, city or more slower beach type atmosphere.
Right.
I could definitely understand that.
Also, it's a very family-oriented place, which I actually think is really charming. So if you go out on a Sunday afternoon, you see families, you see the grandma and grandpa, you see the aunts and the uncles and the kids, and everyone's together all eating, and it's just a normal thing that doesn't really happen in the United States anymore.
Yeah, Spain is very big on family. I've noticed that, and it's great. It's a great thing. You don't see that in the U.S.
You really don't.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate all of your time and input with us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to
No,
our
I think
audience?
we pretty much covered it all. I appreciate being able to talk about living here. I can't tell you how much it's really been the best place that I've ever lived in my whole life. I just love it here. It's a wonderful place to live.
Thank you so much, and can't wait to meet you in person.
Looking forward to that, too.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, thank you so much again, and until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and consider making a donation by clicking the coffee cup on any page at www.wheredogaysretire.com. Each cup of coffee that you buy costs $5 and goes towards helping us continue the podcast. Thank you for your continued support.